I fell into banking and finance. Honestly, I was in Alabama. I'm from Massachusetts. I was sweating my brains out. It was super hot. Someone offered me a job to work in a bank, and I was like, "It's air conditioned. This sounds glorious."
Eh,
So I'll
I'll
take
take
it.
it.
It was a paycheck and benefits. So I started working in banking. My undergrad's not in business; it's in political science. So honestly, I kind of learned a lot of on the job training, and I just fell in love with business. I fell in love with finance. It clicked for me. It made sense. And I did well. I got recognized and was able to advance a little bit there. But very quickly within the first couple of years, I jumped from the banking side of the house, if you will, over to the investment side of the house, doing investment management, financial planning. So I've been doing that since 1998. Had a wonderful, wonderful time, wonderful career doing that for probably 16, 18 years until about 2014. Then in 2014, my wife and I decided that we needed to step into the world, step out and go do mission work overseas. And so we in 2014 left my practice behind. My wife left her job behind. She was a professor, and we took our two kids at the time, 9 and 12, and went overseas and lived in Southeast Asia for 4 years. So had an absolute yeah, I had a
Fantastic.
wonderful experience there. And one of the things you mentioned is, how to use your business background on the mission field. I remember literally sitting there in a conversation with someone saying, "Can you even use a guy like me? All I know is finance. All I know is investment. I know business. That's all I know. Can you use me on the mission field?" And honestly, I felt like going into an area that was incredibly unreached. It was almost like being a financial advisor, right? I mean, I gotta find people that and put myself in their path, get to know them, talk to them, build up trust, and see, and sell this invisible thing here, right? That is faith. When you start talking to
Well, that's an interesting thing to bring up, Rob, when you think about how, because that was
yeah,
2014-ish, and here we are just, 10, 11 years later, how much has changed in the world of global mission to the point that today they'd be like, please, can I see you? Can I talk to you? 10 years ago, like, well, we're not sure what to do with you. So how fast this movement has
yeah,
accelerated.
we were super excited. Actually, one of the things that came up, I remember saying, talking to the people in the organization that we were going through, phenomenal organization, loved it. But at the time, I said, "Look, I'm thinking of maybe I'll keep some clients and I'll be able to kind of manage them remotely, and I can do this." And they were like, "No, no, no. If you're called, you'll get rid of it all and go." And I was like, "Okay," and I did that. But had I come into the pipeline probably about a year and a half, 2 years later, um, maybe not even that far, there would have been an opportunity where they would have said, "Absolutely, let's figure out a way to make this happen. Let's go ahead and do this." So, again, organizations evolve and change and evolve over time. And our whole team on the field, we ended up being a big global city. We ended up having all marketplace professionals on my team that were non fully funded, fully sent people through our organization. So they were, kind of grafted into our organization. But I had, BAM entrepreneurs who were starting businesses. I had their spouses who were, working in organizations. I had people that were working for large global corporations. I had a retired pharmaceutical executive who was absolutely fantastic. So, all of those people with lots of different backgrounds and skills coming together to really flesh out this team to engage this city, this area through the marketplace. It was a lot of fun.
Rob, you sound like the poster child. Like y'all need to put a billboard up of all these people
Yeah.
because that is, in a very real sense, the call of business's mission is that you don't have to go to seminary, you don't have to go to Bible college. You can, there's nothing wrong with it, but there are other pathways to fully engaged missional activity, and these are all professionals. And what a picture that is of the whole body of Christ, as the Lausanne movement, what they say, the whole gospel to the whole world through the whole church. It's like that's what you just
Yeah,
described.
it was phenomenal. And seeing those people, a lot of people, a lot of the full-time missionaries I engaged with, some other people on our org, I would meet them at conferences and they would say, "Oh, you just, number one, you just want to work with wealthy people," or, "Okay, these marketplace people come over, they're making a ton of money, and they're going to work 50, 60, 70 hours a week, but then when are they going to do missions?" And I'm like, "No, you don't get it." I'm like, It's different." And so, like, one family, they took a 40% pay cut to come overseas because their company in the US said, "Fine, we'll transfer you over there. We'd love to have you work over there, but we're not paying you your American salary in a country where the cost of living is." 40, 50% less. So we're going to cut you. So he took a pay cut, and then he had to send his kids to international school, which was an additional cost that he didn't have in the States because he was sending them to public school. So, it's not this, it's not what everyone thinks it is, but he came on board. And the first week I met with him, he had just landed in country. He was working. I said, "Hey," I said, "how things going?" We met for lunch. I was expecting him to say, like, "It's really hot. I'm trying to get used to the living here, cultures, all the stuff that's different." He came in. He's like, "Okay, I got someone in my office who's a Hindu. How do I share the gospel with a Hindu?" I mean, he's on fire. These people are doing missions every single day. He was kind of a geek. He had a spreadsheet and he laid out everyone in his office. He said, "This is my mission field. I have 120 people that work in my office." And he laid out, their background, their ethnicity, their primary language, their religion, if you knew it. If they were Christian, were they going to a church? Were they being discipled? I mean, he had it all laid out, and he was actively trying to engage with all of these people on a regular basis. It was phenomenal. Um, he got invited to go away for holidays with his neighbors or with his coworkers that I never got invited to go to, because there was no suspicion as to who he was. He was an employee. He worked there. Of course, he was a Christian because he was from America. Everyone in America is a Christian, right? And but they were fine with that. They invited him on the holidays. For me, it was always this: we don't understand why you're here because you don't work. What are you doing? And so that was always a challenge that I wrestled with. Um, so I'm talking too much, but I had a guy who literally grilled me at a birthday party for his son. We were my son and his son had become friends at our apartment complex, and this guy's uncle grilled me, and he's talking to me in the local language, and he's saying, "You live here in this building?" "Yes." "Your kids go to the international school?" "Yes." "Do you have a car?" "Yes, I have a car." "Your wife works?" "No, I don't. She doesn't work." "You work?" "No, you don't work." "What did you do in the States?" I mean, like, I'm getting, like, the lamps on me. I'm starting to sweat. I can get an interrogation. And he basically said, "How are you doing it?" He said, "It's going to cost you X amount to live here. You can't live like a local like I can. How are you doing it?" It just never made sense. And so I felt like until I had that authentic story, there was always going to be some barriers to our relationship, and that was going to be a hindrance to the gospel. So,
Well, imagine, I mean, put the shoe on the other foot. Imagine somebody moving into your neighborhood in Alabama who's from another country and doesn't have any visible means of support, doesn't work, lives well. You're going to wonder. You may not think the worst, but you're certainly going to think, what's this guy
yeah,
about? And so it's the same thing, right? And so again, that another commercial for business's mission. But when you're a professional, owning a business, starting a business, working in a business, doing something that people can
yes,
understand, a lot of those barriers just go away. And now, you can live out the gospel, and they will ask you about it because they will. They're very curious. So what happens after that? So you're starting to see this. You didn't stay there all that. You came back. Is that about the time you came back for a while, or?
came back in at the end of 2018. Honestly, we were back on stateside. We thought maybe we were going to go back overseas. We were actively exploring other options. And my wife got offered a job in Southern California, which is where we're based right now. So honestly, it was a confluence of factors that led us to prayerfully decide that it was time for us to stay back in the States. And I think the Lord and his timing is really, really good. And COVID hit the next year. Our country really locked down where we would have been there. That would have been very challenging. There was a very high probability that we could have been back in the States during that time period, and just sort of been in this flux period. So I think, look, the Lord was in it, and it allows us to be back here. My wife and I are both only children as well. And so we've got parents that are getting a little bit older. And so we need to be around to care for them as well. So it was a confluence of factors that led us to be back in the States. So it was the right decision at the right time. The Lord actually gave us, a few months later after we got back, he gave us the ability to lead a team of university students from my wife's university back to the country that we served in. So it kind of gave us a little bit of extra closure after that decision, and really tied it together. So,
How
yeah, the
cool.
Lord's sweet. It was very
Yeah.
nice. Yeah,
So the story continues, because you have lots of steps in here. What happened next? I'm very
yeah.
curious.
So, actually, back in the States, thought I was done with finance. Actually, I'd finished up. Obviously, I left my practice behind when we went overseas. I did get licensed to be an advisor in the country that we were in, by the way, for a brief period of time. As I did some consulting with a small independent financial advisory firm in our city. Which actually, when I had that business card, and I'd walk around and I'd give people that business card, or I'd meet someone and say, "Hey, what do you do?" "Oh, here's my card. I do some consulting." the conversations were totally different. So I got to experience it for a brief amount of time. It didn't quite work into what we were doing organizationally, so it didn't quite fit long term. But I definitely think it could have. Had I gone down a different pathway with it. But anyways, came back to the States, thought I was done with finance. I'd finished up my MDiv while on the field. Was launching into a PhD program. And was interviewing at churches. I thought it'd be like sort of executive pastor, missions pastor, things like that. And then the Lord just kind of kept closing those doors for really good reasons. And the doors, I would get right down to the end, and something would come up and change, and the door would close. Get a little frustrated. I remember wrestling with the Lord one day, saying, "Lord, look, if you want me to go back into finance, I will. But if it could be kingdom enhancing, that would be great." I thought it was good to put conditions on God, see if he does that. But I said, look, I'm not smart.
I'll give an extra 1% of my tithe if you'll do this for me, right?
I said, look, I'm not smart enough to figure this out. I said, but you're going to have to open the doors. And literally like 2 or 3 days later, I get a phone call from an organization that I had not applied to. Someone in our area, in our network, had passed my resume on. He said, "Hey, had your resume for a few months. We've been praying through it. We think you may be what we're looking for." And so I ended up working with a Baptist foundation out here in California. I didn't even know what the heck a Baptist foundation was, but we jumped in, learned a lot, and did a lot of institutional asset management for them. Served as chief investment officer for several years. Had a wonderful time. Great organization. Managing assets for churches and faithful individuals through charitable giving and charitable trust and all that sort of stuff. So just some great families and great churches doing great work. So it was a ton of fun. That gave me a lot of experience in the redemptive investing space as well, and as sort of the faith-driven investing space too, to be able to say, okay, how do we build these portfolios that are God-honoring, that make some money, that are that perform really well, but how do we also do it in a way that honors the Lord when we deploy capital? So that was really exciting. And then I think it was in 2023, end of 2023, just really started to get the itch with my wife, with our family, as to what we wanted to do long term and what that really wanted to look like. And so took the leap of faith and left the foundation. That was a hard decision, but left the foundation and decided to start all over again and start building a financial advisory practice again. So launched my own practice, Global Impact Wealth Management, at the end of 2023, and been doing that ever since.